Well, it's 6:03. I'm not seeing too many more people coming in. So I think in the interest of time, I will get us started. I'm sure there will be some more folks who will continue to join us. My name is Janet Davis. I'm a member of the Worcester chapter of Showing Up for Racial Justice. We worked in partnership with the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition to put on tonight's forum, Your Power Beyond the Ballot Box, How to Make Your Local Government Work for You. I'm just going to do a few housekeeping tips before turning it over to our presenters this evening. We are being recorded. We will have a Q&A period towards the end, and just raise your hand if you would like to ask a question, or you could also put a question in the chat if you would prefer us to read that off. We will be looking for both, and we'll be alternating between the raised hands and questions in the chat. Please mute yourself unless you are talking. That just helps eliminate some of the background noise. And finally, with great pleasure, I will introduce Celia Blue, the CEO and President of MAWOCC, who will start us off in our program this evening. So Celia is the President and CEO and visionary and founding member of MAWOCC, the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. In 2015, Celia collaborated with 12 women of color from across Massachusetts and led the development and public launch of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, Incorporated. In her current role as president and CEO, she is leading the organization to realize its vision and mission, overseeing the day-to-day operations while strongly advocating for the voices of women of color to be heard to address the inequities that are present in every aspect of our lives. Prior to this role, Celia Johnston Blue was the interim director of the Rhode Island Department of Human Services, a cabinet-level position reporting to Governor McKee. Interim Director Blue oversaw approximately 1,000 employees in multiple divisions with a budget of over $900 million, providing benefits and services to approximately 300,000, or 1/3 of Rhode Island's population. She oversaw many partnerships and collaborated with many federal and state stakeholders, including the legislature and community organizations. Prior to being appointed as interim director, Blue served as a former chief of staff and deputy director at DHS for over 4 years. Blue was also DHS's chief administrative officer and the executive lead for human services personnel, informing technology systems and support, performance analytics, and continuous improvement, as well as civil rights, diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is the former registrar CEO of motor vehicles for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and is a seasoned executive leader with over 25 years of leadership experience in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Blue is the first African American in Massachusetts history to serve as the registrar for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As registrar, she managed operating and capital budgets totaling $280 million and oversaw approximately 800 employees in 31 locations. Prior to her roles in Rhode Island, Celia spent 9 years in the transportation industry in Massachusetts and nationally, gaining experience in multiple modes: aeronautics, rail and transit, highway, and the Registry of Motor Vehicles. First appointed as a commissioner for the former Massachusetts Aeronautics Commission, she was later appointed as Assistant Secretary for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation and then promoted to the position of Registrar CEO of the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Worcester State University and a master's degree in Business Administration from Anna Maria College. She has received awards for her leadership and commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and was recently named in the Power 50 Class of 2021 by Worcester Business Journal. Blue sits on the boards of several civic and community organizations in Central and Eastern Massachusetts. She currently serves and is the former chair of the Abby Kelly Foster Charter Public School District Board of Trustees and Finance Committee member, and she is a board member of the Worcester Regional Research Bureau Board. She is also a board member of the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy Advisory Board, McCormick Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies, University of Massachusetts, Boston, and the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials Advisory Board, Boston chapter. In addition, Blue is a corporator for Girls Incorporated Worcester and the YMCA of Central Mass. So please welcome Celia Blue. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. I didn't want to cut you off, but I was like, oh my goodness, this isn't about me. This is about this awesome program that you guys put together for us. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. The team has put together a fantastic program, and I want to thank SURJ for partnering with us to putting this together, and to thank our first presenter today, Cheryl Clyburn Crawford, who's not feeling well, but is sticking it out and here with us today. We really appreciate you, Cheryl, for your commitment and for the work that you do. So just a little bit about the forum today is we have heard from our members and our communities on just understanding government and how government works, your local government in particular, and also your state, where we're focused on local municipalities today. And we hope you walk away from this program, number one, especially after hearing from Cheryl, knowing how the different models of local government are, what are some of the similarities, what are some of the differences, to further help you to navigate, and also to help with making decisions on whether this is the most effective government for your city or town, and hopefully to demystify the process of how you deal with your local officials. We'll also have a public mock meeting scheduled later on as well, to help with demystifying the process of when you have an issue in your town or your city. How do you go about, making those remarks or comments, and go into public meetings where your voice can be heard? This is for any one of us to be able to do. So we hope tonight that you'll walk away feeling more informed, more empowered. Also, the reinforcement on voting and the importance of your vote, and she'll also talk a little bit about that, and hopefully encourage and empower you to be more, or if you're already civically engaged, be even more civically engaged. With that, I'm going to introduce Cheryl. Cheryl Clyburn Crawford is the Executive Director of MassVote. Before I get into the rest of her bio, I just want to tell you a little bit about MassVote. MassVote is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that seeks to increase voter participation in our state. MassVote advocates for electoral justice for the sake of building a government truly representative of the people. Started in 1999 by a small group of community leaders, came together to close out the voter turnout gap between white suburban areas and urban communities of color. Today, MassVote works on a nonpartisan basis to increase voter registration, education, and participation in historically underrepresented communities in Massachusetts, to promote social, economic, environmental, and racial justice. So just a little bit about MassVote. Now back to Cheryl. Cheryl is the current executive director. She was former the executive board chair of Emerge Mass, a political leadership training program. Cheryl sits on the Women's Pipeline for Change Oversight and Planning Board. She's an active member of the Order of the Eastern Star, a Prince Hall affiliated organization. She's a member of the Attorney General's Advisory Council on Racial Justice and Equity. Most recently, she was appointed to the Citizens Commission on Constitutional Amendment, as well as board member of American Promise. Before MassVote, Cheryl served as a campaign manager and then chief of staff to State Representative Willie Mae Allen. Born in New York, Cheryl grew up in Boston and is a graduate of Lesley College, Cambridge, Mass. And I can tell you that this bio doesn't reflect the expansive work that she does, not only on a local level, but also statewide and nationally, and is very, very involved. So we really appreciate her taking her time to be with us this evening. And with that, I will turn it over to Cheryl. She will do a presentation. I'll have a couple questions for her. We'll open it up for questions from you, and then we'll conclude this session and move into our next session, which will be our mock meeting, and we'll provide more information on that as we move forward in the meeting today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cheryl.
Great. Thank you, Celia. I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here this evening, particularly to have this conversation. It's an important conversation about your local government. Your local government is everything, when we talk about, and so in my conversation this evening, I want to talk about the structures of the types of municipal governments that we have existing here in Massachusetts. I want to talk about how to engage, how we should be engaging, and also why it's so important. And I'll say this at the top of the meeting. I always feel like I'm preaching to the choir. When I look at the audience of who we have, these are our folks that are most engaged. And that's why you show up. And so as we go through this, I want to think about, how do we do this differently? So let me just start with talking about Massachusetts. You know, Massachusetts has two types of local governments. We have town and we have city. And there's 295 towns and 56 cities in this state. The difference between cities and towns is structural, right? A city is defined by the presence of a city council as the alternative legislative body, whereas a town has a town meeting to determine legislative priorities. And so a little bit about town governments. And I know I'm looking at the audience. We have some of us live in towns and some of us live in cities, right? With town governments, traditionally, towns in Massachusetts operate under a town meeting form of government, where residents gather to decide on local issues. This is one of the oldest forms of direct democracy. This is one of the oldest forms of direct democracy in the United States. You know, some larger towns have a representative town meeting system where they have elected representatives that make the decisions on behalf of their residents. In towns specifically, executive authority is vested in an elected board of selectmen. The selectmen may choose to appoint a full or part-time professional to manage town affairs, right, on a day-to-day basis. And the incidence of such an administrator generally correlate to the town's population size. Now, we know that once a town has so much population in it, it should become a city, but oftentimes towns decide that's not what they want to do. You know, a good example is in Lexington, Massachusetts, which operates under a representative town meeting system where elected meeting members vote on local issues. When it comes to city governments, cities in Massachusetts typically have a mayor, city council form of government. And this structure features an elected mayor and city council. The mayor council system can vary, with some cities having a very strong mayoral system who has a significant administrative and executive powers, and others have a weak mayoral system where the city councilors make all the decisions. A good example is Boston, which has a mayor city council government system, with an elected mayor and a city council. You know, we have a hybrid system in the city of Boston. We have, when it comes to the city council districts, we have 9 districts in Boston and 4 at large. Those 4 at large city councilors are a part of all of the city. So when people say how many city council, each district really has has 5 city councils, because all 4 of those at large in your district. I'm just dropping these nuggets. We're going to tie it all in, right? But they have 5 people that they could reach out to, right? Some of the things that are very peculiar to them, the town's meeting system is unique to New England, right? Not many in the states throughout the country, not many have town meeting systems. This is very unique to New England, and it represents a form of direct democracy rarely seen elsewhere in the United States. Some of the similarities, both towns and city government, this is the main thing, regardless of whether it's a city or whether it's a town. Both town and city governments handle all the local issues, such as education, public safety, and zoning, and they both really rely on local taxes for funding. Those are the major distinctions between them. We have different models going on throughout the state. For instance, in Lowell had an all at-large city council. That wasn't really working for them. So we fought with them, the city, to change it so that they have a hybrid system like Boston. So that people really, because they have different ethnicities and different groups here, right, in Lowell that needed attention. The whole thing we're talking about is representation. And you can't get proper representation if you can't get anyone in that's representing your issues. And if it's one giant blanket, that may not necessarily be paying attention to your issues. And that's why it's almost critical that you have these districts. Now, I want to say on that note, we fought and fought and fought and got it to a hybrid. We didn't really get the results that we wanted. We got some new people in place, but it's a process. It's the beginning of a process to build. You know how they say, if you build it, they will come. Well, that's what we need to do. We need to continue building the structures, because we have to think about how the structure is working for us. I want you to keep that in the back of your mind the whole time we're talking. Whatever structure we're talking about, is it working for your particular community? Because what we need our voters to know about local government is the roles and the responsibilities. Understand what your local government is responsible for. They're responsible, as I said, for your schools, for your local roads, for public safety and zoning laws. And so when we're talking with people, and I'm gonna mix some data in here, we have data coming up in a moment, but we don't have enough people voting. That's just the bottom line. We don't have enough people voting. So only a handful of people get to determine what our school systems look like, what our local road situation is, what public safety issues we are handling, right? Also, what we need folks to know about their local government is the election cycles. You need to know when the local elections are occurring. And now in Massachusetts, I find it hard to believe that you don't know that there's an election, because we have an election every single year, whether it's municipal or state. But knowing who is running, that's critical. Knowing who's on the ballot, knowing what the different roles are, whether it's municipal, whether it's state, whether it's federal. What do these people do? It's incumbent upon you to understand what they are responsible for, how decisions are made, especially in town meetings where residents can directly participate. What structures are set up to determine how decisions are made? You have a voice in that. We as individuals have a voice in all of that. And I'll tell you why in a moment. Plus, we get to talk about how local budgets are determined and spent. Now, in some cities, such as Boston, it's mayoral heavy. We know that. The mayor in Boston has the most power. And so our city councilors don't make as much of the decisions around budgeting. But that is the only place where they can. Right, veto and go through the whole process. So we need to look at that. Again, are the structures working for you? When we talk about, and I keep dropping nuggets about we don't have enough people voting. When you talk about voter turnout in local elections, it is dismal. I was going to put up these slides this evening and show you the wonderful turnouts, except for it's not wonderful. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm not going to play it up like it is. You know, we have municipal election, the highest turnout, 10% in Chelsea. I don't want to call anybody out, but really, right? Like when we look at Worcester, right? When we look at Springfield, when we look at the city of Boston, the turnout is ridiculous. Voter turnout in the local elections tend to be significantly lower than in the national elections. For example, in Massachusetts, state primary held in 2022, the total number of registered voters was 4,838,359, out of which 1,052,414 actually voted, resulting in a turnout of 21.75%. That's not enough. And so, you know, we talk constantly at MassVote about why voting and civic engagement are important. Why is it important? One is because it has a direct impact. Voting, local government decisions often have a more immediate and visible impact on our daily life than those made at the state or national level. We know that. Again, your schools, your roads, your parks, everything that has to do with your quality of life is really determined on the local level. So why aren't people not voting, right? That is something that's baffled us for a long time. And I don't want to call it voter apathy. I really don't. I think that people don't understand. People don't really understand how it affects them, truly affects them. How one vote, and I'll always tell this story about Julia Mejia, Councilor Julia Mejia, who literally won with one vote. So when people are like, does my vote matter? Absolutely, your vote matters. But why are we not getting people to vote? I really like to have, and I know that that's not the format for this evening, but that's a conversation, Celia, right? That needs to be on the table, right? That we bring up. Why are people not voting? Well, I look at the people here on the screen. I look at the organizations that I work with. And I do a lot of coalition building with organizations like the Election Modernization Coalition. The Election Modernization Coalition is composed of 8 different statewide organizations. And we do we make legislative priorities, so that we can remove the barriers. One of the reasons voting and civic engagement is important because of representation. Voting ensures diverse viewpoints are represented in local governance. But not if you can't get folks elected, or if there are barriers that are put in place that keep people from voting. And one major barrier that we're working on is same-day registration. That's in 22 states. Why we don't have it in Massachusetts? Well, we know why, those of us that have been working in this space, but we're going to have to continue to chip away at it. Same-day registration would make it more possible for everybody to vote, regardless of the reason they didn't re-register. Did you just recently move and forgot to change your address? Or did you recently get married and didn't change your name yet? Same-day registration would take care of that. As well as another piece of legislation we're working on is ranked choice voting. That's something that opens up the field. We are oftentimes, when we're trying to get people in, because we know we need people in that represents our issues, right? And when we're trying to get people in, what we'll often do is keep people, say to people, so-and-so is going to run, so we want to put all of our power behind this person. That never works, by the way. But if we had ranked choice voting, as many people that wanted to run could run. And what we would have is somebody winning by 51% as opposed to 21%. A true victor in it. Those are just 2 pieces of legislation that we're working on. Ranked choice vote didn't pass as a ballot initiative statewide a couple of years ago during COVID. So now individual cities and towns are passing it as resolutions. Boston has one that we're going to be working on, and we'll talk about that later. But when you're talking about voting and civic engagement, why they're important, community improvement. Active civic engagement can lead to better community outcomes, as residents have a say in how their locality is ran. Starting with school boards. You got to start somewhere. In many towns, they have school boards, they have water boards. They still have water boards, right? They have school boards, they have water boards, and that's where you cut your teeth, so to speak, where you get in and you start making a difference. And you run for city councilor, and you run for whatever, dog catcher. It doesn't matter, but just being involved in your community, representing your community is what is key in all of this process. I think about, we just had a municipal election that just passed here in 2023. Again, the numbers were ridiculously low. What are we going to do about that? How do you get involved? We offer trainings around how to do a lobby day. I know many organizations here do lobby days. So once you get somebody in office, it's not enough to just get them registered, because the biggest gap we have found is not only who's registered, it's between who's registered and who actually goes out to vote. We have many people that are registered, but do they actually go out to vote? And oftentimes they do not. I showed you the numbers, 4 million people registered. 1 million one-fourth of the people go out and vote. So our job is to educate people on why it's important. really bringing them the issues, because most people want to know what's in it for me. What's in it for me? Most people think our structures are not working. That's debatable. Well, quite frankly, they're not, right? They're not really working for all of us, but we can't just blow up the system. We have to be able to work the system from the inside and outside, meaning we have to be on the ground, talking with people, educating people, getting people involved in a civically engaged way on any level around any issue. Because to get civically engaged, you just have to find your voice in the issue that you care about. It's not hard, right? It's not hard. As I'm speaking to you gatekeepers, because that's what I'm looking at here on the screen, are all my gatekeepers. These are the folks that go out and actually get the work done, boots on the ground. You know, I don't know, you know all that I'm talking about. I mean, there's no new information. I'm willing to bet there is no new information here. It's a matter of how do we pull it all together and move forward, right? What are we going to do as organizations to come under the same umbrella? There's room under the tent for everybody. There's room under the tent for, there's much work to be done and plenty of room under the tent. So locking arms, I was really grateful that Celia reached out to us, because we also run a women's program, the Women's Pipeline for Change, very much grassroots, that ties into and links into MAWOCC, right? And all of our programs are really interconnected. And how do we use that interconnectedness to really advance our issues? There's more power. There's more power in numbers. Us working in silos is not the answer. So as Celia and her team, MAWOCC and SURJ and all these organizations that are fighting for justice, social, racial, economic justice, as we do that, right? Like being mindful to call in other players so that we can all participate. I don't have much more. There's not a whole lot more. If there's something directed that you wanted me to speak to, Celia.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the different forms of government and just kind of go over that again. So I love that you highlighted that New England, we have the oldest form of government, in the sense that we have the town meeting structure.
Mm-hmm.
Where and that's where Board of Selectmen, and I just wondered if you could just elaborate a little bit more on that. And then what are the, I guess, similarities? So you've got the town, you have the strong mayor, and then there's a third, in that you could have a mayor and a city manager, right? And a city council. So I don't know, what is that considered, a hybrid as well, or like what's that form of government?
I think that's semantics, quite frankly. When you have
Okay.
right, it's really about semantics, whether you call them a town manager, city manager. It's the structure where you have somebody that's operating on the day-to-day, all the day-to-day, managing the administrative pieces, right? And then you have the city councilors that are sitting in the hearings and listening to all the issues that are going on and how they operate. When you have like Cambridge elects their city councilors, and then they appoint their mayor. They appoint their mayor from within the city council. Boston, of course, we elect our mayor and city councilors. So there's different forms. The selectmen board operates as the same as a town board. It's a town board. It operates almost the same way as city councilors, right, in the districts, because they represent a particular district, and they just go to the meetings and they represent you, their constituencies in the meeting. But they have these town meetings where the people come in and talk about what their issues are. We have the same structure in the city council. We have hearings. And that's another thing. We need to encourage people to show up at the hearings. There's power in numbers, right? So when we have a hearing around an issue, we need people to show up. We need people to testify. We need people to submit written testimony. It really is. I used to work at the State House. You know, I was the chief of staff for State Representative Willie Mae Allen. And it really is true. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. It really is true, right? Like if you have tons and tons of people that are calling their legislators, writing op-eds around a particular issue. We've had it. I remember one time the State House called us and said, please stop having them call us, right? We had shut down their phones, their system. We're emailing them. So many people were emailing and calling that it was flooding their system. That has an impact. So the more people we get to vote and show up. You can't just vote and not show up. You have to vote and stay engaged. They say that the elected officials do not, you only see them when it's election time. We're trying to change that. Organizations like MassVote and the Massachusetts Voter Table and, you know, the Election Modernization Coalition and all these different organizations, League of Women Voters, all these organizations are doing year-round work, not just July and August when it's time for the election. We're starting in January. It's bill filing in January. We need to have the bills. We need to support the bills that are on the dockets, right? Like, and not only we can't directly do that. What we do is reach out to our representatives and tell them what we're thinking, what we want, what we like, that kind of thing. But yeah, the structures kind of work the same. They have representation for constituents, different bodies of people.
Can you talk a little bit about, so we have the Board of Selectmen, the town, they have the town meeting where a lot of those decisions are made. With the other modules, the mayor is more of the, you know, the, I think you called it more of a strong mayor, so has a lot of authority to oversee the city and works in sort of in concert with the city council. And then the other pieces are, if you have a city manager that is more, I know in Worcester, we have a city manager, mayor counts, and the mayor gets elected by the people. So the city manager runs the day-to-day and has more, I mean, of the authority. I think in terms that I think that he does. Whereas I think now if you want to go and have some of your issues addressed, there's a couple of routes you can go, right? The city manager versus city council. When you talked about Lowell and how you said that they had an at-large system that wasn't working for them, can you talk a little bit about that in terms of what wasn't working and how did folks organize? Because that's, you know, we're trying to make sure that with our forum today, that you're definitely walking away. And I love how you said they drop in little nuggets, right? Is that we want people to walk away with really understanding how to organize, how does local municipal government work and the differences, similarities, and, you know, be able to make, as you said, decision on, is this an effective form that's working for you? And if not, how do you go about that? And you've used I love that you used the example of Lowell. Could you just talk a little bit about that, why it was not working and some of the organization that happened, you know, in the ground, you know, we like to say really grassroots, right? To make such an important shift. And that experience would be great to just hear a little bit more about.
Absolutely. Lowell was an at-large city council, had an at-large city council structure. And so when I say it wasn't working, it's because mostly white people with power were making all the decisions. They have communities, strong Khmer community, right? They have strong Latino communities, and they could get no representation. And so in these different areas. And so you know how when it's at large and you vote at large, whoever has the popular vote is getting in. Versus when you have regional elections, regional districts, not regional. When I say regional, I mean regional within Lowell, particularly the different areas where you know where folks live. They needed people that represented them on the school committees, on the city councilors, And so it ended up being a lawsuit, actually. We worked with the Lawyers for Civil Rights and pulled the lawsuit and said that this is illegal, right? Like we should be able to have representation. And we fought with them. The Lawyers for Civil Rights did an amazing job in making the case for us. And so we, on the ground, the work that we did on the ground organizing was often we had these town hall style meetings where we will bring in everybody to talk about exactly what the issue was. Because when it comes time to vote, if they don't understand what the issue is, they're not going to vote in the right way. And so we spent a lot of energy on the ground we did language justice up in Lowell. What I mean by that is like everybody wore a headset, not just the folks that did not speak English, even the English folks. Language justice, where everybody has an interpreter, we're all hearing the same thing. And just really making them feel a part of the community. You live here, you pay taxes here, you're a part of the community, and you should have some representation in this community. And so again, through the lawsuit with the Lawyers for Civil Rights, we were able to change it from an all at large to a hybrid system where they had where they have at large and they have districts.
We are going to open it up for questions in just a moment, but I just wanted to follow up on that. So in terms of the shift happened, and now what are sort of some lessons learned around that shift? Because I think you mentioned there's still some challenges, doesn't mean it's always going to solve everything, but you know, what were some lessons learned with that, and how do people, what's the importance of staying engaged so that you can continue to evolve and change as you move forward and realize that, you know, certain things are not necessarily what you expected to gain out of that change?
Right. You know, just because we built the hybrid system and made it such that in the different respective communities that they would be able to elect someone that represented them, it didn't, you know, if people don't run, then it can't happen. So that was some of our, you know, we built it, but the other infrastructure wasn't there where people would run for that office and win. Right. So now what the lessons learned is that we're going to continue to build, continue to do the work up there, to continue to empower people. Right. They got a taste of it. So now they know how it works. This was just the first time that they were able to do it. They know how it works. We'll continue to do our work on the ground up there to get people to run, you know, to get people to understand all of the issues on the table and why it matters, that kind of thing. But I would say that was one of the issues, you know, our expectations didn't pan out exactly, but we know that was the right thing to do. The people were calling for it. And when the people are calling for it, it's our job to help them to get it and to teach them how do you go about getting that. And that's the whole lobby and your legislators putting on record what you are, you know, what you're thinking, what you want, continuing to push the envelope, continuing to talk to them, continuing to write letters, continuing to email them, continuing to do lobby days. It's ongoing. You continue to do
right.
Do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. I mean, I know you mentioned earlier too, and this is why it's important to do year-long work, which is also the decision we made to do this year-long work, because that's, you know, it's going to take all of us really shifting to focus yearly on the work that we need to do and to help our communities to be more engaged. So I am going to open it up for questions, just some rules. I see we've got a question in the chat already. Please put your questions in the chat or raise your hands and we'll get to you. I see that we have a question in the chat now. I'll go there and then I'll go to you, Freddie, because I saw that you had your hand up. But we had a question in the chat prior to that. So let me just pivot to that. So what are some reasons, here's a question in the chat. What are some reasons people give for not turning out to vote? What do you think could be done differently to increase voter turnout at the local level in particular?
Some of the reasons we get that people don't come out to vote, I want to say they're not valid, most of them, because we've done everything in our power. I'm just dismissing most of them, because when it was that you could only vote 7 in the morning to 8 at night on one day, okay, I'll give you a pass. You have 2 jobs, you have children, a family, you're on the public transportation, whatever the case may be, right? But now that we have early voting, now that we have mail-in ballots, we have all these things that you could do for at least 2 weeks. Clearly, you can find a moment within 2 weeks to mail a ballot, and they make it easy now to request a ballot, right? So some of that is, for me, my mind says the reason, outside of the fact that some of our returning citizens don't understand that they do have that right the moment they come out, outside of that one, and we just have to educate them that you do, the moment you come out of prison or some kind of structure of that nature, you do have the right, to vote. That's the only one that I call plausible. Maybe. Everybody else, you don't get a pass. And I think the reason they're not is because they have not absolutely understood how it affects their life. They've not been able to connect the dots on why would you vote for a city councilor that wants to have public parks in your community, right? Why would you want the reasons? They don't understand why or how. Oftentimes people tell us we don't know who's on the ballot. Let me tell you something. We put out candidate guides, we do candidate forums, they're publicized everywhere. If you don't know who's on the ballot, it's because you don't choose to know. I mean, the information is out there. With that being said, I do know we have to meet people where they are. So there's some things that we need to do. We need to do the old-fashioned days they used to have, or back in the day, I should say, they used to have Saturday schools where you hung out on Saturday and, and you're just learning the history of something. We don't have those kind of sessions where we're sitting around talking anymore on the stoop. One, it's dangerous. But anyway, we don't do those kinds of things anymore, right? So that we're in these intergenerational conversations where our seniors was passing down. You need to know the history. Young people today don't care that Black people were beaten and sprayed with water to get the vote, or women couldn't vote for so many years after men. They don't care about that kind of thing. That's old-timey stuff. Well, we need to approach them on what do they care about is the environment. We know that, right? Like in all the surveys that we're doing, young people care about the environment. And they should. They care about their tuition and schooling. They care about jobs. They care about housing, how they can't afford to live in the major cities because they don't make enough money. So we have to meet people. What can we do differently? I'm not sure. And I welcome advice from everybody that I'm looking at here. How do we do things differently? But my only offer is always about educating people and what's at stake, what a ballot issue. When we have a ballot initiative, what does the ballot mean specifically, and how does it affect you? We can't do it enough. We have enough people, enough organizations out here that are boots on the ground. I'm not sure what we can do differently, but we're going to keep working on it because that's the thing that we're studying. What can we do differently to have people vote?
Freddie, you had your hand up.
Thank you so much. I do. So I have a couple of questions, but first I have to say, Cheryl, I could listen to you all day long. And I so want to thank you. I know everybody feels this way for all this spectacular work you're doing, for your passion, for your commitment, your knowledge, your expertise. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. And I just want to say thank you for all that. To that, I have a couple questions, I guess. So one is it was Lowell where they only had voting that was community-wide. They didn't have any district voting. I'm sorry, was that Lowell?
That was Lowell, yes.
That was Lowell. And so I learned about that and the problem with, with groups, that if they don't have people district-wide through the whole city, their voice is lost. It's dissipated. They can't get enough people to vote so that somebody representing them can be in the city council, right? So I think it's awesome that terrible you had to go through all that work, but thank goodness that you did, so that these people can elect their own community leaders, right, to represent them in town. Are there, and I have a couple other things, but are there other communities like that where you're engaged in battles like that?
We have Everett. Everett's another one. So, slowly but surely, as we take a look at where we're working and what the structures are and how they are working for those communities, Everett's another one that we need to make some changes.
Thank you. That's so important.
And I just want to say that in the chat, Freddie, Ayanna has at Springfield, on November 6, 2007, voters of the city approved a binding question that changed how city councilors and school committee members are selected from at-large to ward representation. So that's
Huge.
another example.
Thank you, Ayanna, for putting that in there, right? So that's huge. I wondered, Cheryl, are you working at all? I had some conversations with the Environmental Voter Project. Are they part of your efforts at all?
They're not, I can't say that they're a part of a coalition that I belong to, but we often bring in, whenever we're working on different issues, we'll bring in we call them allies. You know what I mean? So, we always develop allies along the way. That's a group that it sounds like we need to, if they're on the ground, we want to know about them.
So I'd be happy to make a connection there. The reason why I'm thinking about them is because I learned a lot of their work. It's focused obviously on the environment. What they did was they learned that there were a lot of people out there who were environmentalists who cared a lot about how people were voting and so forth, yet they weren't voting. And so their focus has been on researching why aren't they voting and what would get them to vote. So I think it's been great that they focused on this issue. And a long story short, I understand it turns out it has a lot to do with basically, to whittle it down, like peer pressure. If they know their neighbors are voting, it will get them to vote.
There's been studies, Freddie, done like that, where people put it out there, like they have these little pieces of paper that they tell people, but your neighbors voted, and people really do respond to things like that.
Apparently they do.
They do. People, I forget his name. I think his last name was Green, did an extensive study on doing those kind of projects, those kind of surveys, and moving it forward, letting people know, right? People care when somebody else is watching. So maybe that's something we should consider.
Interesting, right? So I'll just put it out there. Suffrage 100 Mass, we're happy to, love to work with you anytime on getting out the vote. Our goal on the history piece has been, we hope it will inspire people to vote when they, understand better what people went through to get the vote, particularly for women and people of color. So thank you.
Thank you, Freddie. Janet?
Thank you. Just kind of to take off what Freddie was saying. So Worcester is another community that recently, for school committee, changed from all at-large to having the hybrid model with some districts and some at-large. And so I guess my question is back to Cheryl, where I think many of us would say that this was the first election where we were electing in that model rather than at large. And I think many of us feel that it didn't really turn out the way we had hoped. And so, you talked to some of the reasons why, and every election is a little bit unique and has some of those, but I think there was definitely not enough people running. There were a couple of districts where there was only one person on the ballot. So, there was no competition. And so I guess I would just look for some advice for those of us who are trying to work in community to get more people to want to run. And I realize you have a lot of expertise in that. So I welcome any thoughts you have on that. Well,
the one thing we say, particularly pointing to women, that it takes 7 asks to get a woman to run. So, and if you ask a man, I don't care who it is, shake out his pants, and he's running the next day. They hadn't even given it a second thought whether he's qualified or not. Women, we got to dot the I's, cross the T's, and make sure everything's in place, right? But what we continue to do is to handpick to continue to tap people on the shoulder, to continue to have women and men understand the power that they hold. You hold power. We each have the same power when it comes to voting. Every last one of us gets one vote, period. Use it. Use it. But yes. I think Ayana has a question.
Yep, I was just trying to get off of mute. Thank you, Ayana.
First of all, thank you so much for hosting this, Cecilia and MAWOCC, and certainly Ms. Crawford. Thank you so much for being here. So lovely to see you. Excuse me for my camera being off at this moment. But I did have a question in regards to voter suppression, and I'm not sure if you touched on that prior to me joining in. And so I want to sort of think about, you know, how does that work in the bigger scheme of things in terms of when folks do go out to vote, they're excited to vote. And then here we are, you know, in a position of other things that they need in order to vote, and then get discouraged to not want to continue to vote. And so how does that sort of play in the bigger scheme of things, locally, nationally? Just want your thoughts around that.
One of the things that we constantly work on is removing the barriers. One huge barrier that speaks to what you were just talking to is same-day registration. Same-day registration to us is the total stopgap, right? Like if somebody shows up at the poll and their name is not on the list, or they're listed as inactive. We're trying to do something with that piece of the bill. Inactive, you become inactive if you don't answer the city census 2 times in a row and vote. You become inactive. Then they want you to show proof of residency because they're not supposed to ask for an ID. It's proof of residency when you go to the polling location. That can be very discouraging if you don't have a piece of mail on you or something that shows proof of residency. They'll they'll have you vote on a provisional ballot. We're trying to get rid of provisional ballots. We had some disturbing data from the Secretary of State that was outrageous, the number of ballots that actually were not counted. Provisional ballots really are only counted in close races, right? We're trying to get rid of them. We know that if you have same-day registration, you won't have the need for provisional ballots, and that it will lessen the work that the towns and the cities will have to do, because you don't have to go back and count the provisional ballots. With provisional ballots, not only do you vote on a provisional ballot, you have to come back with whatever proof of residency. And if you don't, then that's a voided ballot. So it's that extra step in there that we're trying to remove. We're trying to remove the barriers. Same-day registration is a huge one. Removing people, decoupling the census from the inactive voter. That's one of the bills inside of the voter access bill that we're pushing right now, is decoupling that. If people don't fill out the census, you shouldn't put them on the inactive list. That should be 2 separate kinds of entities. So, yeah, we're working on it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm just double checking to see. David Webb dropped a couple things in the chat. Ways of getting people to change their mindsets, and some links there. And they need to understand something as a change. It has to be then, it has to be now. Totally agree with you, David. Did you want to say anything else in regards to your post? No, you're good. Okay, thank you. Sarah?
Hi, thank you so much for this meeting tonight. I was curious if you could please speak a bit to efforts to lower the voting age for municipal elections to 16, and also expand the vote for municipal elections to folks with permanent residency or without citizenship, and what those fights look like, whether at the local or state level, and what has to happen to maybe expand the vote to those groups of people. And thank you again.
So, I mean, both of them are pieces of legislation that we're advocating for. to lower the voting age. I think it's 17. We worked on 16 and 17. I know up in Lowell for a long time, Jeff Foster was really running this organization to get the municipal election to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. And that didn't happen. We're still working on at least getting 17-year-olds to be able to vote in the municipal elections. This is local government. We believe in it. The same for new citizens, right? That if you live here and you pay taxes and you work here, it would stand to reason that one, you'd have a driver's license, and number two, since you're paying taxes, that you get to vote. So, you know, both of them are in their respective houses. Like City Council, I know, is working on a resolution around it in Boston, different places. It's in different places, right? In different cities and towns as they make their efforts to have these things passed. But ultimately, they have to make it to the State House, and that's where the real work begins.
All right, we are a little bit over, but thank you guys for your engagement and for your questions. I think a same-day voting, we heard from Cheryl, is important, so make sure, and I think Bridget dropped in the chat, make sure that you're urging your legislators to support that. And another way is also thinking about ranked choice voting. And we continue to engage with our families, our friends, our community members on the importance of voting. So I want to thank you again, Cheryl, for being here with us today. We had a great conversation, and we're looking to, we're with you about really the next session around voting and what will it take to get more of our communities out there voting. And we're with you and working together to try to figure that out and whatever else we need to do to collaborate. And thank you again. I know you're not feeling well, but you still did amazing as usual, and appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over now and introduce you to Courtney Henderson. Courtney is the founder and CEO of Development and Empower Consultant Firm. It is a small firm that works with candidates running for elected office and with municipality leaders. She provides campaign management, policy analysis, community engagement strategies, and on voter participation plans. So hence her, we're glad to have her as part of our political and civic platform with putting this program together. Courtney also sits on, it does a couple of things. She is, I don't know how you keep saying with all of these different hats, Courtney, adjunct faculty at Massasoit Community College. She also is the multilingual public information coordinator for the city of Somerville. She sits on the executive board at the Brockton NAACP, executive board member for her chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, and she's also on the board of directors for the League of Women Voters, Massachusetts. She's also a MAWOCC member and is an intricate part of our political and civic leadership platform. I'm going to turn this over to Courtney to walk us through our next session.
Thank you so much, Celia. And thank you, Cheryl, for the wonderful presentation that you gave. I always enjoy working alongside you and MassVote. So today I am going to walk us through a town hall mock meeting. But before I jump in, I want to just share the importance of town hall meetings. And I know Cheryl alluded to it a little bit, but I think it's just so important to kind of walk through why that's important. So for those who are not familiar with town hall meetings, or maybe don't live in a town and live in a city, town hall meetings are gatherings where residents of towns can come together and discuss various local issues, policies, and community matters. They also set the terms for budgets for salaries and how they allocate funding to certain town programs. And it's also an opportunity for them to share their opinion and, most importantly, vote on those issues. So like Cheryl had mentioned, towns are structured very differently from cities, and the town is where people get to vote on these matters firsthand. They are the ones that's making the final decision. So it's so important to make it to those town meetings and making sure that your voice is heard. So there are some things that I wanted to highlight about the importance of these meetings, and that it promotes community engagement, which is something that all of us have shared being a part of. It also allows for you to understand local issues. So I know that there were some questions around why people don't get involved, and it could be that they just don't understand the process. So attending these town hall meetings could help you understand that. And most importantly, it holds your elected officials accountable, and it holds them to a standard that you would like for them to reach. And I also think that town meetings is what a true democratic participation looks like. So that's just a few things, and I can go on and on and on because this is something that I'm so passionate about. But to spare you all this evening, I will just highlight the top 4 that I think are so important when it comes to town hall meetings. So town hall meetings are structured, can vary based off the town. So, but for the most part, it is a warrant that is presented before each town meeting. And that's a list of items that are up for discussion and up for a vote. Some, but not all, towns operate with the Roberts Rule of Order. If you are not familiar with the Roberts Rule of Order, there are books that you can read on the format, but you can also reach out to your clerk's office and they'll have all the information on how the meetings are held. And you can also reach out to the clerk's office to get more information about meeting recordings, voting records, and any minutes that were taken from that town meeting. By law, all meetings have to be recorded and uploaded for everyone to be able to review. Now to the fun part. Now that I've gotten through what we all know and understand, and like Cheryl said, we're preaching to the choir here, I want to jump into the fun part, the part that I really enjoyed crafting for this evening, and that's our mock town meeting. So before we break off into 4 groups, I have decided that we are going to do a mock meeting on 2 really big issues that are happening here in Massachusetts. The first one is going to be on affordable housing. So there will be a group that will be advocating for affordable housing, and you'll have 4 minutes to discuss with your group the talking points that you would like to mention. And like Celia had mentioned, I am an adjunct professor, so I teach speech communication. And I always tell my students to speak on experience and speak on things that really touch home to you. And that's usually how we can persuade people, is by our ethos through emotion. But you all have full creative autonomy here to kind of craft your remarks, but you'll want to identify a key speaker from that group to speak on behalf of affordable housing. Then we're going to hear from the opposite side. You may have to play devil's advocate here, but you will be going against affordable housing. And then the third group will then do for public transportation, for improving public transportation, and then the other group will be going against the improvements of public transportation. You all will have 4 minutes to discuss with your group, identify a speaker, and then once we come back from the breakout session, I will be the moderator for the town meeting, and we will hear your remarks, and then we'll call for a vote on these issues. So without further ado, I am going to stop sharing and ask that Violet breaks us out randomly into our groups.
Can I just say something really quickly on the
Absolutely.
public meetings, is that this is usually in the beginning where they call for public comments, where you can, right? That's a section where you can certainly, unless it's specific and you want to be on the lineup, but you can also do this in any, public meeting where they have public comments,
Absolutely.
where you can make these, where you can be in record with your position.
Absolutely. So for those that don't, and that's a great point, Celia, thank you so much for bringing that up. For those that don't live in towns, I work for the city of Somerville, and we don't have town meetings just because we're not structured as a town, but we do have community meetings where residents have a period to stand up and share their thoughts and share their grievances if they have any, or share their praises for how the city is being operated. So there's always an opportunity to share what you have for your elected officials. So thank you so much.
Can
Janet,
I
did you
just
want to
raise
add?
one more point about that?
Yes.
Like
Um,
that, Jean? Oh, go ahead.
Most town meetings, whether it's public comment or you sign up to speak, they have a limit a time limit, and they're pretty strict about it. So you find out from your specific town what that time is. It's usually about 2 or 3 minutes. So it's good to practice, like Courtney's having us do, because you really should formulate your thoughts and get the point across very clearly and concisely. What's the problem? Your personal note about why it's a problem, and then what you want the decision makers to do.
Yes, they're very strict. And I think I mentioned that, I put that in the slide deck, that you do have 2 minutes to present your case. And then there are some that have 3 minutes, but it usually doesn't exceed the 3-minute mark.
I was just going to request that you put in the chat, like, which group is arguing
Yep.
which side.
Violet preset the group, so you'll know which side you're on.
Perfect.
Yep, Violet's amazing.
All right, we can
Yes,
go.
this was going to be my quick announcement that I'm going to send everyone and open up the rooms. It's going to automatically send everybody. If you have any questions at all, Courtney and I, as well as Celia, will be in the main room if you have any additional questions.
Thank you. Perfect. Oh, that was beautiful, seamless.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we
Violet.
had a
I know you're
couple.
probably sweating.
No, we had a couple drops. So the
I
rooms
know.
are a little uneven.
Yeah, I kind of figured that once I saw people were dropping. We didn't get to them quick enough to put them in the room. We
I'm
had so
so
many questions.
guilty.
I probably should have kept my mouth shut too.
I know. I'm guilty. I can't even blame them. Like, once I hear breakout rooms, I'm like, oh, I'm done.
I know. Me
I
too.
don't have any more discussion in me today.
Oh my. So
Yeah.
what have you been up to? How's work?
Oh, these kids. So I teach, one of the classes is early college access. So they're high schoolers getting college credit, and I always tell them I'm not a traditional millennial. I don't keep up with the slang. I don't keep up with like what they're interested in. So I've learned a lot from them. I've learned
Mhm.
so much jargon.
And now is
What
this in your
generation are they?
is this in your regular job that you're doing with the
Oh
city,
no,
or this
this
is with the college?
with the college, yeah.
Okay.
So this is just
Mhm.
something, I don't know how I got into it. I think I like teaching. I can, figure it
Yeah.
out. And yeah, it's going well. I'm not complaining. I love it.
Mm-hmm. But your day to day?
Day to day is good. We actually, I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but Somerville had its first ever Civic Day. And
Oh.
I got to lead that. I was the chair of the planning committee. It was very stressful, but I loved seeing all the residents come out, regardless of their language, to Civic Day and get to learn about the city departments and what they're working on. And we had food and music and all types of entertainment, and it was a huge success. The mayor wants to do it again. I told her, you might need to find another person to plan.
Chair.
Because that took a
Yeah.
lot of energy out of me, but it was very fun.
Yeah. Right. Wow. How you doing, Jean?
Fair. I was in a breakout room and it listed one other participant, but they didn't come on the screen and I couldn't hear. I wrote in the chat, it was the affordable housing. It said B, but I was the only one there.
Yeah.
Well, there was another
Says
person.
their
but-
name is Betty, but I can try to move maybe Magda, but now that people have started, Mom, would
I
you
don't want it
mind
to be
joining?
just Betty and I. Just put her in another one.
But then we have against affordable housing, and then we won't have any for pro. So if I put Celia with you, would that be okay? Jean?
Um,
I guess.
Well, Courtney, do you think we need to pull an audible here? So should we just go with what we have?
Yeah, let's just go
And
with what we have.
yeah.
You know, because sometimes in mock meetings, I mean, in actual town meetings, you might not have anyone, you know, that's against or for it. You might just.
Yeah. Okay.
We could also
Thanks.
ask if there's anybody in the audience that wants to say a little something for, was it for affordable housing or against? I was in,
Is for affordable housing.
yeah.
And Betty didn't come on screen, you said?
She didn't come on screen and I took the mute off and called out her name and then I wrote in the chat.
Yeah, I don't.
Where is
I mean,
she
we
now?
can ask, but I don't know. That would be unfair if they did all that work on against, and then we're asking them to do for. I think, you know, we'll go with the 3 groups that we have and keep it as is.
So I'm sorry, which is the one we don't have for affordable housing? For, okay.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
Let me see if I
you,
can
Celia,
find.
if you wanted to join her just to come up with
Yeah,
a little something.
I'll jot something down.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find something that I did on affordable housing for the town here. I testified. Ugh.
How much time are we giving them again?
Just
So I
4
can send out
minutes.
the like
Yeah.
reminder.
I thought you said 4 minutes, but
Yep.
Yeah,
But I think
but
it's
now
one.
I'm wondering if we passed 4 minutes, so I just want to.
Yeah, we are just.
Give
it's
them a
okay.
warning.
I mean, you have till 7:25. It's 7:15.
Yeah.
You want to have a 10-minute discussion? You
Yeah,
got to call them
I don't
back.
even think they might have questions, but yeah, we can cut into a little bit of the Q&A, but we can actually start bringing them back in. I'm prepared.
1 minute
Okay.
left.
Maybe give them like a little minute warning.
I'll broadcast a message to them saying 1 minute left.
1 more minute, yeah.
And then I will close the breakout rooms and have that 60-second counter.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
I'm going to make myself a little presentable so I can go on to close.
Okay.
Okay. I have 10 minutes to look as beautiful as you two. It's not going to happen. I'll look the best I can. How's that?
You're beautiful the way you are, Jean.
But I have no backbone. I'm spineless.
That's funny. Well, I'm glad that you have a sense of humor about your condition.
Well, there's not a lot of alternatives.
Yeah.
I talk about it sometimes, but I'm not one to mope and complain all day. Just do what I can. So my mother's 91 and she tells me she picked out a scooter for me for Christmas because she doesn't know what else to get. I said, get it for yourself. Can you imagine? That's sad.
My friend loved her scooter. She ended up she hurt her ankle. She sprained it, but it was a bad sprain. And we started calling her Scooter Mendez because she would just zip around the office. She loved that thing.
I need it too. It was
And
just
she threatened us, when she came back, she's like, I'm gonna go back on my scooter. Like, no, because you're everywhere. No.
I could really have fun with that, I think.
She did, boy. Tortured us.
Okay, I'm gonna close the breakout rooms now.
Okay.
right, I think everyone's back. Welcome back. You have now entered into MAWOCC Town Hall meeting. So before jumping into the mock meeting, a few things that I forgot to mention about town halls is that everyone is allowed to speak regardless of their voter registration status. So if you're not registered in the town of MAWOCC, you can still voice your concerns. You just can't vote. That's it. But anyway, welcome back to the town hall meeting. I am Courtney Henderson. I will be the moderator for this meeting, and I will like to call the meeting to order at 7:18. We do have an agenda here for you all. I don't have copies, but I will tell you that we have 2 topics up for discussion, and that is the affordable housing policy and the improvement plan for public transportation. We will open up for each section, open discussion from our residents to hear your thoughts. And after we hear all of the remarks from our residents, we will call to a vote. So with that being said, the first item on our agenda is the affordable housing. Are there any residents that would like to speak on behalf of this issue or against? Yes, Janet.
Sure, I will go first. I'm against this proposed affordable housing for a couple of reasons. One, I live in this very nice residential neighborhood with these beautiful historic single-family homes, and I'm concerned about this proposal, which would bring in some multi-story dwellings. It's really going to lower my property value, and that's a big concern for me. I'm concerned about overcrowding. I like my neighborhood just the way it is right now, and I feel like this new development will bring in more people. It'll be overcrowded. It may also bring in people who are immigrants to this country who don't necessarily know how to use our systems appropriately. And so for all these reasons, I'm really opposed to this. And so that's how I feel on this topic. So thank you.
Thank you, Janet. We have noted your remarks in the minutes. Are there any other residents that would like to speak on behalf before we call to a vote?
All right, so we have against and we need 4, right? So I'll speak up 4. Okay. So first of all, I disagree with my fellow resident of the town of MAWOCC, and here's why. Homelessness continues to increase in this country. The rates for rent has continuously increased, and the cost of housing is continuing to increase and not keeping up with inflation. It's not keeping up with the salaries and what we earn in this country. And so we can't continue to do the same thing and expect that we're going to have less people on the streets or in shelters. So this is why I'm for affordable housing. There's policy changes that I would suggest that we do, and that would be, they are developments that are happening. It doesn't have to necessarily be multi-use housing. These could be residential housing development. You don't know which one is an affordable housing, but you have a higher percentage of these properties being built. We can increase tax incentives for developers so they won't be losing money. And then instead of, most, I think communities have maybe 10 to 20%. I think Boston has 30%. I would suggest that we look at least a 40% increase on affordable housing for these new development projects. And not projects, new development initiatives in the city, in this town, that would give our residents a chance to be able to be a homeowner and also reduce the amount of homelessness really that we're facing at a predominantly, especially after COVID, that has increased tremendously, and we need to do something different to affect change.
Thank you, Celia. Thank you, residents, for speaking. We will now call to a vote. So all those in favor for the affordable housing plan, please show your hands. All right. All those opposed? All right, and it passes with a not unanimous vote. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the improvement to our public transportation. We will now open this session for open discussion. Yes, David.
Hi, David Webb, City of Worcester. I'm here today speaking against the improvement plan for public transportation. It is really expensive to run them. And it's just unsafe and unhealthy. As we just saw with this nasty pandemic, people can get sick from using these buses. Never mind the smog. Don't get me started on how bad for the environment these are. And they cost the city way too much. I don't want my taxes to go up, and they're so noisy. They're unreliable anyways. They don't come often enough. Sometimes they don't even show up. And there's low ridership among the youth who would rather spend $20 on an Uber or Lyft instead. I urgently request this council not move forward with this plan.
Thank you, David.
Yes, that was my team.
Yes, I love it. I love the energy. Are there any other residents that would care to speak? Okay. Yes, Sarah.
I will speak in favor of public transportation. So we discussed that transportation is a basic need. People need to get from point A to point B, whether for work, school, appointments, entertainment, fun. And we need to do a job of providing that service to our residents. It's a question of equity, right? If folks don't have a car, which is a significant portion of our community, how else can they get around? And particularly if they can't pay that $20 for an Uber. And we also discussed the environmental impact, and reducing cars on the road will decrease our greenhouse gas emissions, which contributes to climate change. And nobody likes traffic or congestion, which increased investment in public transportation will help alleviate.
Thank you, Sarah. Seeing that there aren't any others that care to speak during this open discussion, we will now call to a vote. All those in favor for the improvements to the public transportation, please show your hands. All those against? Is Magna against?
We were in the against.
I feel I gotta support my team where we were against.
Support our team.
That's the only reason, but I am all for.
But our speaker is voting for, so.
David did awesome.
That was good. All right, and the motion passes. Thank you all. We have come to the end of our agenda, and I will now call this meeting to an end. We will adjourn at 7:27, and the recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the town's website in 48 hours business days, and we will have the minutes to accompany that recording. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Those that were not able to come to the public hearing, is there going to be an opportunity to submit written testimony?
Absolutely. They can submit their written testimony to the clerk's office, and we will put that down for the record.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Courtney. That was great. And I love the energy. Thank you all for sticking around. I know we were saying as soon as breakout sessions are mentioned, people are, oh no. So thank you for sticking around with us. And that was fun. And that's how, we want folks to think about our meetings, right? That they're this demystified, that you have to be, the most articulate in the world, although who you guys were. It's just a matter of just making sure that you are to the point and you share why you're not in support or you are in support of an idea. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jean Morrison, who is our MAWOCC Board of Director and our statewide chair of our Politic and Civic Leadership platform. So I'll turn it over to Jean to do her closing remarks.
Okay, I can't, my picture's disabled, I'm sorry, folks.
We can hear you.
Okay. This was really a great presentation. Cheryl's gone, but I wanted to also personally thank her. As Celia said, I'm on the MAWOCC board in the Political Civic Leadership Platform chair. I also want you to know that I serve on 2 statewide boards, so MAWOCC and the League of Women Voters, MA, but local, we're talking about local. I serve on 5 local boards. And part of it is because, not because I'm a workaholic, but a large part of it is because the work's all connected. So I find myself joining committees and boards where my voice can be heard and you can have representation. So you don't have to be an elected official to have representation. I wanted to say that. Cheryl hit on some highlights about the importance of voting and civic engagement. And just a few key words that I wrote down was representation is key. Not enough people are voting, and knowing the voting schedules and who's running for office. That's a responsibility that we have as responsible voters. And also education is important, and knowing the process for your own city or town. And a really more important one, when you use your voice, you use your voice to vote, that's power. But also when you use your voice to take action by joining one of these committees, that is also power of turning things into action. And also don't forget that all of us are accountable, that step up to do work, but so are the elected officials. So that's a really important something to get over a fear. If you have fear about going to a public hearing or a community meeting, just remember they work for you, and those elected officials are accountable for you or for us as voters. So those were the major things. And also what Cheryl stressed was at the local level, there's a direct impact, more of a direct impact on those elected people in those seats making decisions, direct impact on your everyday life than even at the state level. And you're paying for it. She mentioned that too. You're paying for it through taxes, and they make important decisions. So when you drive around town and you're upset about the policing that's going on, or the public works, or the zonings, you didn't use your voice. What I tell people is you don't complain if you haven't tried to reach some gain. And I also think that we're not really preaching to the choir. I look at it like we are the choir, we're singing together. And in that song, we're trying to make our voices known. And we're also constantly educating each other. So because all of us might be engaged, I think I learned a lot from hearing from Cheryl today and hearing through some of the questions. So it's an ongoing process. I would like to thank in particular, not only Cheryl, our guest speaker, Cheryl Clyburn Crawford from MassVote, but also our moderator, Celia Johnston Blue, co-founder and CEO and president of MAWOCC, and Courtney Henderson for facilitating a really good exercise for us to sort of simulate what it might look like to bring an issue forward. And also, and for facilitating that, also our tech support from Violet Blue and Jesse Paquette. And I'd like to acknowledge the partnership with Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, MAWOCC, and Showing Up for Racial Justice Worcester, SURJ, in putting this second series together, and we will have a third one coming out well after the first of the year. And last two thank yous are to the committee members from MAWOCC, myself, Magda, Courtney, and of course, always Celia's advice, and SURJ, Janet Davis, and Margot Barnett. So I want it, and the best for the last is all of you as participants. Thank you very much for coming and for sharing your thoughts and your comments and questions. And have a nice evening.
All right, folks, with that, we're going to sign off and thank you again. Have a nice evening. See you at our
Thank you,
annual meeting
everyone.
on January 20th
Oh,
next year at
yeah.
Holy Cross.
I forgot
Yeah.
the announcements.
Thank you.
All right,
Great,
bye-bye.
great,
Thank
great
you.
evening. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye
Bye.
now.